There we go. Hello again, everybody. Thanks for joining me this Wednesday morning for our Wargaming Wednesday. Let's get this started properly. Hello again, everybody. This is Mr. Everything, and I am coming back at you with some Wargaming Wednesday. Okay, and today we're just going to sit and have a general discussion for a couple hours, as if we were around a table, talking about, like as mates, like what you've accomplished, what I've accomplished over the last week or so, as if we meet every Wednesday at Wednesday o'clock, every Wednesday at 11 o'clock. Okay, just to give everybody a heads up, a little warning. Weather's pretty good here today, so our doors are open. So if any outside traffic or wind, because it is pretty windy outside, if any of that becomes distracting, just let me know in the chat and I'll go close the door. It's no big deal. Also, my son is currently gathering up all the trash in the house, and so he is preparing to carry that to the dump. And so he'll be back in about 30 minutes, as well, whenever he leaves. So there'll be a short interruption as he comes through. Okay, I have a number of things to discuss, but I also have a number of things to not announce, I suppose, just to you're going to hear a lot of ums from me today because I don't have a script, but I do have some. I'm not going to call them announcements because they're not really announcements. They're just basically heads up. I guess that is an announcement, but okay, as you all know, okay. Let me just say this up front as well, for those of you that are listening. Wargaming Wednesday is kind of like a practice run for me, or maybe not a practice run, but basically, you guys get information before my channel does, even though this goes directly up to my channel. But like, I will take a project that I am working on. We will talk about it in Wargaming Wednesday, and then I will film a video about it and upload those pieces on my channel. So by coming to Wargaming Wednesday, or by watching these later after the fact on YouTube, what you're doing is you're kind of getting a little insight, or a insider information on some of my projects that I'm working on. Okay, so I moved my camera, so I'm having a hard time like identifying where the camera is. The camera for my head is right there, but the other camera is right there. Okay, good. Okay, so as you all know, I'm working on a Waterloo project, right? We've been doing this for over a year now. Been doing a 28mm Waterloo project. I had almost completed Quatre Bras. I had gotten so close to Quatre Bras. I think I'm peaking, so I'm going to bring my volume down just a little bit. Yeah, that should improve the volume. Well, maybe not. Okay, hopefully that does. And hopefully by pushing the microphone a little bit further away from my mouth, it will improve. Yeah, I'm hearing wind blow stuff around outside. Okay. So you know I've been doing this Waterloo project for about a year now. And I've been cranking out battalions and battalions for Quatre Bras in 28mm. And I had gotten this close to finishing it. I had like probably less than 15 battalions to finish, and I would have been completely good to go on Quatre Bras with a good start because I had already done some of my Waterloo battalions as well. I think I've already done like at least 10 of those. So I had gotten a good start into my Waterloo campaigns. And as you also know, I was planning on proxying different units because I was going to break the battlefield down into 3 different sections. Well, all of that is out the window, right? It's gone. I have decided to take my 28 millimeter, and I still have a bunch of 28 millimeter models that are still in the bags or boxes, or they're still on the sprue or whatever. And I've got a bunch of Perry, Victrix, Warlord, front rank, now offensive miniatures. I've got a bunch of metal, plastic miniatures that I had acquired with the intention of finishing those last 15 battalions. Drive safe. It's really windy out there, I noticed. Yeah. So with those extra models, that'll be fine because I plan to now, instead of putting them together and painting them, and bunches of GMB flags. I think I almost have every Waterloo flag. Oh my gosh, there's a lot of extra flags, but that's okay. Because what that's allowing me to do now is I can paint some 28 millimeter Napoleonics and know without a shadow of a doubt it's not for me, right? It's going to go up on my store. So, and I've already started that. So if you're interested, I got some Highlanders, I've got some French, I got artillery, rockets. I put Ney and a British general up there. Basically, there's a handful of figures up there. If you're interested in 28 millimeter Napoleonics from the Waterloo period, 1815, 100 days battles or whatever. If you're interested in that, check out my YouTube channel. Not my YouTube channel. Well, you can check out my YouTube channel as well, but I would check out my eBay store and see if that's something that you want. Now everything I'm listing on eBay, I've noticed it's only available in the US, but I am not opposed to changing my shipping policy. If you're interested in a specific battalion and you're not in the US, you're in the UK or Germany or Brazil, wherever you're at, if you're interested in something that I'm selling, let me know. Okay, there's 101st going overhead right now. If you're interested in something I'm selling on there, please let me know, and I can change the shipping availability to worldwide. But initially, I pretty much, just to save people on shipping and save me on shipping and things like that, right now, everything's listed for the US. Okay, so Mr. Everything, why has that been thrown out? Well, because of the Epic Waterloo. Now, Epic is 13.5 millimeter, I know, but I still have some holdouts. I've got some old Glory 15s. I think they're 95th rifles, which I'm going to mount up as skirmishers anyway. But those guys are just a little bit too big, right? So there's a couple of things I'm going to do to see if I can't do a little eye trickery for these units. One thing I've done is I've gone to Litco, because I do almost all my basing through Litco. I went and ordered some of their 0.8 millimeter basing. That's how thin it is. So it's going to be really low to the ground. It's wood, it's plywood, it's thin, right? That's the basing that I've been using for adding magnets and adding the flex steel, so that I could put the magnet and the flex steel together with my 28 millimeters, and all four of those layers together come out to 3 millimeters. So I decided just to go ahead and ditch the magnet, because I won't need it, because the skirmisher bases and the line infantry bases, the cavalry bases, they're all exactly the same size. So they're all going to fit in a movement tray. If I make any of those, they're going to be smaller. Actually, they might be. It depends on how I make the movement trays. I think I'm going to do 60 by 80 movement trays, the size of a artillery base, but I'm not sure. Okay, so by getting rid of that whole magnet idea, I don't need to hold skirmishers in a battalion. I don't need to take those figures to deploy them in front. I don't believe that's how I'm going to be doing my skirmishers. I'm going to be doing my skirmishers as tokens. So that just means I'll need extra models for skirmishers. But luckily there's only 6 little 15 millimeter figures per skirmisher base, and I'll only need 1 base per battalion. So that's like pennies on the dollar. So what I'm going to do is get the 0.8 millimeter bases, which, like I said, is 1/4 the size of the 3 millimeter, 32 millimeter, but it's lower to the ground. That 2+ millimeter difference is the difference in the height for my epic models. So I really can't experiment or test any of this without getting some of those epic infantry in my hand. Cavalry, not even concerned about it. 15 millimeter cavalry, 15 millimeter. Oh, you're back?
What? No, I had to move the...
Oh, okay. I was like, damn, that was fast.
Yeah, I just had to move the car.
Yeah. So the 15 millimeter infantry standing on a shorter base should bring their heads down. And even if the head is still up a little bit, I'm not concerned with that. That's a minor adjustment. The only problem that I'm going to have with basing up actual units, formed up units, is getting 20 models in 15 millimeter shoulder to shoulder on one of these bases. I struggled a year ago when I was experimenting when Epic ACW came out. But something came to me the other night that that gave me hope, right? First of all, I can take a metal snipper and I can trim the bases down to be closer to their feet. So the only concern, if they're standing there firing, but the base is extra big on their feet, I can trim that down. That way I can put 2 guys side by side if I need to. Also, I don't know if you guys ever used to play Warhammer Fantasy, but they used to put humans on these 20 millimeter bases, and they would put like other races on 25 millimeter bases, like orcs or whatever. But humans were on these 20 millimeter bases. And remember, these figures are like 30 millimeters, 28 to 30 millimeters. They will be heroic scale. So how did we rank those up on a movement tray? You know, how did we put the bases side by side? Because they would not go side by side. Well, these slot bases were built specifically with the slot at an angle, right? There is almost a 45-degree angle. Sometimes it was, and usually the way I based it was, it never went slotted straight to the corner. It was always like slotted like 1 or 2 millimeters back. So when you put your model on there, the bulk of his presence, the bulk of his like weapons and shields would be centered because you place it on the back side of that slope, right? Okay. And then when you ranked them up, they were all standing at a slight angle like this, right? And then you just put all your guys on the bases like that. Why can't I do that with my Napoleonics? I can do that. So I'm gonna get some rank and file dudes. Well, I already ordered some. I ordered some more like center company guys for British skirmishers, and some odds and ends. I've ordered a bunch of limbers already, and I ordered some generals, named generals, and I can't remember. But the point is, I ordered some of this through Old Glory 15, which is a really good priced. Because hell, you get 6 limbers for $10, something like that, with horses and crew and everything else. Maybe it was $20, but still, that's way better than buying one limber for $40 in 28 millimeter. Okay, so here, let me catch my breath. I still want to work on this today before the video ends, but I washed these right before the stream. These might still be a little wet, so I'm kind of letting these dry a little bit. Those are offensive miniatures, 28 millimeter World War II U.S. paratroopers, and I ordered the like, I guess it's like a starter set. It's a collection where you get 62 models. I think it was 79 pounds. So right at $100. I got 62 metal models. These guys are going to go. I need to clean them and base them and all that stuff, and that's what we were going to do today. But I also wanted to touch on some of my other projects that are doing, because they got 2 hours to kill, right? Okay, so back to the Napoleonics. I'm trying not to get too distracted, but the Napoleonic models are just a little bit bigger, and I don't know if I can get 10 of them shoulder to shoulder on a 60 millimeter base. I think I can, right? But they're not going to look like the Epic models, because the Epic models are molded with them like more than shoulder to shoulder. It's like their shoulders are overlapping, like the guy on the other side, his shoulder is over my shoulder, and they're actually really close together. They don't look like if I did metal models, unless I could find somebody that sells metal models in strips, which I don't think they do. But these metal models are going to be individuals side by side. And I think that trimming the feet, putting them at a slight angle, I'll be able to get a bunch of them on a 20mm base. But I am going to try to avoid that. I am going to try to exclusively do the Warlord 13.5mm because of the tightness of the models, the plastic nature of them, the inexpensive nature of them, the speed of painting them, etc. like that. So I understand there's going to be wave 1, wave 2, wave 3, and possibly more waves down the line, depending on how popular this set is. And I know there's going to be Highlanders and 95th Skirmishers coming in the next set. But hopefully there's others like Hanovers and Belgians and Nassau troops and all that kind of stuff. You know, Liebgard, Brunswickers, all that stuff. So as that gets released, if it gets released, I will be picking those up and adding those to my army. So yeah, so I've done a complete 180 from a couple of years ago when I said I was getting rid of all my 15s and I'm going to stick with just 28mm. Well, that's a lie. I found I'm going to do 28 with every other genre that I'm doing. American War of Independence, 28s, because the battlefields are a lot smaller. The units are a lot smaller. Ancients, 28mm, because, again, same thing. Battles are smaller. Everything's going to be smaller. World War II, obviously, 28mm bolt action is perfect scale for that game and this table size you're playing on. And lastly, my 100 Years' War. I've considered Ancients and 100 Years' War in 15s, but I don't think I'm going to go that route. Only the Napoleonics in 15s. And that's because of the battlefields are just so much bigger. And you have so many more like units on the table and stuff like that. And especially if I do it by battalion. 15mm, back in the day, 15mm brigade scale games, which is 24 figures represented a brigade, or 4 to 6 battalions. Putting Waterloo on a 5x9 was kind of a stretch. So now, with this 15mm battalion scale, it's going to be like double the size. It needs to be double the size. So I still might do portions of Waterloo, but I've decided not to do it in inches. I mean, it is going to be inches, but it's not going to be. I'm going to do it in 2/3 scale. I've decided. I considered doing it in half scale, 6mm. That, or 6 inches equals 12mm. 6 inches equals 12 inches. That is that's a possibility. Also, some people are suggesting doing it in centimeters. And that's also another possibility. Centimeters are actually 2/5 of an inch, right? No, 2/5 of an inch. So it's less than half an inch if I go with centimeters. But I don't have to change any numbers. I don't have to say, well, I don't have to do any conversion. I don't have to say 8 inches is 12 inches, or I don't have to say 6 inches is 12 inches. I could just say 12 centimeters is 12 inches. Makes it easier, plus it'll really shorten the table. So I'm debating on how I'm going to do it with that. Okay, so I ordered some wooden dowels, mainly to make my range rulers, once I've determined how I want to do it. Also, I'm going to use range rulers for other games, but I already have my like bolt action range rulers. And I also had black powder range rulers, but they were full size. So and they were like 1/4 inch or 3/4 inch or something like that, 3/8 inch. I don't know what they were. They were pretty thick and round. But these dowels I ordered are like 1/8 inch. They're going to be very small, and that's what I want. Also, okay, let's talk about some of the videos that I just finished. And I need to upload one. I still have, I just rendered it last night. But I have a Liquitex flow aid and additive video that I added it to my wash, and it went really well. I told you it was windy outside. Okay, so hindsight, I mean, the models look awesome, but the hindsight is I should have used less drops of flow aid. Shouldn't have done a 1-to-1 ratio. On the packaging, it says only use 25% flow aid. So I think I should have used 50%. So I should have went with 2 drops of wash and 1 drop of flow aid. That's what my next thing is going to be. These figures right here have that 50-50 mix of wash and flow aid. So I'll show these guys off here in just a second. I just did these yesterday. These are all, everything there is Perry. So this is a Perry resin. I need to move that. This is a Perry resin tractor, number 7, SDKFZ 7. I put a little bit of that sand grit on the tracks. Give a little love. I pulled some decals out from some old Warlord tanks that I did that I didn't use all the decals. Plopped them on there, as well as like the bumper sticker. Okay. Yeah, this is one. It's not a solid resin. These 2 wheels and the steering wheel had to be glued on. But other than that, this was one solid piece resin. About $20. I think it was. It's lightweight because it's resin, but yeah, I think that came out very. I like it. All right, now. I wish Perry had sold their crew models with their Flak 88, but Perry sells them separately. So I put them on some black powder. Put them on some bolt action bases, and used the Vallejo desert texture on there, and then I threw also a couple of 88 decals from other 88s that I had worked on and not used all their decals. So you got some kill stripes, you got the letter C, you got some air kills. The Perry 88 came with a bunch of extra ammo cans, I thought, or ammo, I guess, containers. I thought that was pretty cool. And I put some tufts in there around the legs, so, and not everywhere, but that's so that I could put models on the base for crewing it. One thing Perry does is they give you 8 crew, which the gun only calls for 7, but there is a little trick there. There's the 8th guy. He's manning the gun, and he was built for this gun, right? Because his seat, there was no seat was included. Well, actually there was a seat, but it wasn't his seat. That was included with the gun, but his model has this leg that goes up into the gun, and there's a hole there already for him to be mounted properly. So Perry, if you're watching this video, I think you should just sell this as one kit and not, you'd have to raise the price, obviously, which is probably why they don't want to do it. And they probably don't want to include their metals with their resins. And I get that as well. So there's also, maybe they're two different companies. Maybe, you know how some companies like Warlord will subcontract to either Italary or Renedra to do some of their plastics. This might be the case with that as well. But knowing that this gun didn't come with a crew, I ordered the crew. When I got the crew, I didn't realize that there were 8 guys. You got the one there, and then you have the 6 guys there. So I went and checked my army lists, and I saw that there is an optional 8th model. He's their spotter. All right, so you can get a spotter, an optional spotter for the gun. And I thought that this model would be the best for the spotter because of the rangefinder that he's got. So let's just take a real quick look at these guys. And remember, I used the Liquitex and Strong Tone flow additive on the wash, and I think it came out really well. One thing I'm noticing is it thins it out to the point where it doesn't ruin your paint job. I think that's going to be really good when it comes to bright colored uniforms like American War of Independence or Napoleonics specifically. And then also the 15 millimeters. Really, that was part of the reason why I was experimenting, and I really still need to experiment with 15s to see if that flow, what level of flow additive I need to use on my wash to make it not ruin my 15 millimeter paint jobs. So once I get some 15 millimeter epics in, or if I decide to do those 95th rifles that I have on my shelf, I will let you know. Okay. Okay, all of these are on eBay right now. So if you're interested or you like these and you do bolt action, or if you just collect various skirmish level models or whatever for your World War II Africa Corps guys, I've got those available for you right now. Okay, so we got those out of the way. We'll get to this here in just a second. This is going to be the last thing I do because it's going to be an all-day project. I already know. Okay, so I'm gonna move my camera so you can see a couple of things, and then we'll bring the camera back. I think. Okay, right there. Right about there. Okay, you see my turntable right there. You see I got a spotlight right there. It's got some kind of 100 lumen, or no, 2500 lumen, 100 watt bulb in it. When I turn it on, you get a suntan. I have that in that light bulb right there. And then there's a little camera that I use for recording various videos, and I take my still pictures with that as well because it can actually focus within 1 inch. So when I take my camera, if I ever wanted to, I could get down to 1 inch of a model and it will still focus. I love that camera, and guess what? It's super cheap. It was like $200. Okay, but the point I'm trying to make is the black boards. I took 5 of my Midwest products boards that I had been making terrain model. I make terrain tables using or terrain tiles using those and other things. And then because they're plywood, they don't usually warp under the presence of liquid like glue or whatever. So I mount corkboard on it, and then I can texture my corkboard to give me various types of undulating terrain. But never mind that. I took 5 of them and I sprayed them with flat black, and I made me like a little studio there for filming or taking photos of models that I am going to be putting up on eBay, right? I've found, I thought, okay, let me do white because that will really bring out the, it'll be like backlighting. So whenever I turn on my spotlight, that it will reflect light and you'll get a good backlighting and all that. And then I thought green because, most of my models are all historical tabletop wargaming models. So I was thinking green might be good. But I did a little research and I found that black actually is the best because it absorbs the light and you don't really get a backlighting effect, because the backlighting effect actually ruins your picture. You have to actually have compensators that compensate for backlighting. And so by eliminating backlighting, you're actually improving the clarity or the crispness of your models. So I experimented with a few different models. Some of my new Napoleonic ones that are up there, and these guys right here, the Africa Core guys. I did those with the backlight, with no backlighting, with this new little photographing station, and the back wood. Okay, there's 2 pieces of wood on the bottom. Those are just placed on the table, pushed together. The back actually has packing tape along the back corners to keep it from falling apart. But what I noticed was I didn't tape one very good, which was actually that was a good thing. Because now I can take one of my sides and fold it back, and then I can lay the other one down. So it folds up like an old Avalon Hill battle map, right? And then I can put it on my shelf when not in use. And I was like, wow, okay, that's cool. But over the next few days, I've got some models that I need to post up on YouTube, so I'm going to leave that set up over there. Okay, next thing in the studio. Well, look at all that packing tape. Okay, and I still have some tools, Black & Decker right there, because I went and had to repair my shelving. That, as you know, let me get that where it belongs. Okay. As you know, last Tuesday, everything just fell onto the floor. And I had a bunch of broken models. I had a bunch of bayonets that are broke off. I had some muskets that were broke, some lances or spears or sword arms. I didn't really have as many broken models as I thought. I had maybe 20 or 30 broken models, And it was nothing but as simple as gluing his standard back in his hand, or gluing a sword arm to his shoulder on some of the calf. But there were a few that were like my warlord lancers that have these really thin plastic lances. I had to super glue those suckers back on there. They're never going to be the same, but they look good. But also you'll notice that I took down all those tiles that were along the top shelf, because that's where all the weight was. I put that in a box. That's actually under my table. So that was a lot of weight. These 4 vertical brackets right here are all in studs, right? Previously, they were just in drywall, and that explained why it went kerplow. Okay, and so I have some 7-foot shelves right here. They're split in half right there, as you can see. And I was trying to decide if I wanted to put the 4-foot side over there, or if I wanted to put the 3-foot side on this side, or whatever. And I decided, based on where these 4 were at and where the split would be, I wanted to put the split between these. Now, I could probably shuffle and adjust a little bit, but I thought about the 4-foot sticking out on this other side. But because I've got these paintings here, the shelves wouldn't go but just a few inches past. And so I decided to do it on this side, because I could go out as far as I wanted. So by doing it on this side, I added a 3-foot bracket right here. It goes all the way to the top. You could see it's like right there all the way to there. So if you ever wanted to extend these other 2, I could do that as well. But by adding a bracket right there, now I've got a sturdy 4-foot shelf here. And if I ever wanted to do a 4-foot shelf on this side, I could throw another bracket in right next to those photos, or whatever. So that's all working out really good. And I'm now very conscious of the weight I'm putting on these shelves. Even though they're now in studs, I'm still very conscious about it. There's my Macedonians with its elephant. There's my Romans. Yeah, you can see I've got a very small army of both of those. I'm still got to work on that. This group right here is my 100 Years' War. That's a very small group as well. You can see these little black boxes right there. That's all Perry generals, like Joan of Arc and the Duke of Brunswick. Not the Duke of Brunswick. The Duke of Burgundy. Yeah. Those are in those boxes. So that's going to be coming soon. And then this and this and this and all of this. That's all 28mm Napoleonics. That is Greek cavalry. Right there I've got some Gar battle drones, which I'm not doing a Gar army. I'm like, I don't even know what that is. Oh, those are old AT-43 dumpsters, cargo containers. There's a bunch of limbers and wagons right there. And then I put all my Sarissa buildings up on top. And that's not a whole lot of weight, to be honest. And then there's my homemade skirmish, World War II buildings, medieval buildings. That trestle bridge, oh my gosh, that trestle bridge, it took the majority of the collapse. Almost every beam on the top had either broke or shattered or something. That took me all night putting that back together, but guess what? It went back together. I'm happy about it. So everything's back full strength on the shelf, good to go. Okay, so we did the flow aid and additive, but we also did a terrain texturing video, and you can see right there a bunch of AK and Vallejo texturing kits. Okay. That's good right there. And that's where this desert sand had come from, was one of those Vallejo. I also did AK, like I said. Now, I hear a postman outside. That's really early, but that's okay. Postman usually goes by during this video, this time period, that time slot that we have. But when I went to order them, I ordered them from 2 places, and neither one of them had the mid brown, right? Which I might actually be getting those in today. So I'll show you those. All I got was desert and dark brown and muddy brown, which is also dark brown. Those two are interchangeable. I put them on bases. I did a video showing them all off. Even when dry, they look exactly the same. So I'm disappointed with that. We got dark earth and muddy brown, muddy earth or whatever it is, muddy ground. They're exactly the same. The 2 deserts, I did one from Vallejo, one from A and K. I call it A and K when it's probably AK. They're exactly the same. And I made a comment on the video where one is 200 milliliters and the other one is 250. But the packaging is pretty much exactly the same size. Well, that's true, but once you open it up, you can see that the Vallejo one has a big air gap where it is probably 200 milliliters, and the AK goes all the way to the top, so it is probably 250 milliliters. So for the same price, AK is a better a better bargain, right? But from what I can tell, they are exactly the same grit, so they look really good. They're the same color. The other ones I couldn't compare with Vallejo because they were all AK. And then the snow, I did snow on there, and that looks great. I really like this snow, so I think I might have to do some winter models now. Okay, just so I have an opportunity to do some snow. Okay, so having said that, I've gone back to these sites and I found that they were now offering, they must have just got a shipment in, of the light earth and the medium earth. I knew the light earth is going to be more like a khaki. It's going to be more like that color, and I didn't want that on my ground, but I did want some medium brown, which is going to be more like, it's going to be more like that color, right? Maybe a little darker than that, actually. Maybe more like that. And that's exactly what I use now on all my 28 millimeter models as the primary grit. I use like a medium brown, and then I put grass on top of it. And so, so I went ahead and ordered one of those. So when that comes in, we'll do a real quick comparison of that as well. Okay. I did 3 videos on offensive miniatures. These are miniatures that I've not had in the past. I've never had an offensive miniature. Got them in, did a few videos. Jackie at Offensive Miniatures has been very kind to me. When I ordered I ordered the US pack and the British Para pack. The British Para comes with like 2 sections, some Piats, some mortars, some machine guns, all that good stuff. One of the 2 sections, it has less figures. It has 36 figures as opposed to 62. So, but one of the 2 sections was actually a German section. And apparently, because, you know, Salute was this last weekend, and they were in a hurry to package up a bunch of models for Salute, and, you know, well, it was hectic around the office or whatever. So basically, she said that she knew she had made a mistake, but didn't know where those Germans were, and then so she pretty much was wondering where you know, she was glad. Let me just say she was glad to hear that, you know, that she heard from me, and my understanding is she's going to resolve that. We're still in the process of resolution, so I don't know exactly how she's going to resolve it. She said she already knows what she wants to do to resolve it, but she didn't really tell me. She just kind of hinted at it. Okay, that's wet. This is the brush that I use when I'm agitate. I put these models, not this many, in a bowl, about half this many. I fill it with soap and water, and I use this brush as the agitator because it's soft enough that it doesn't really hurt the model, but it's hard enough that it gets down inside of all the cracks and corners and stuff and gets rid of the mold release. And offensive, you definitely absolutely have to wash these because they come coated in mold release. Okay. Yeah, and then the British had a Piat crew member, 2 Piat crew members, one standing, one prone. They both don't have their right arms. They have to have their right arms glued on. But the package came with a right and a left arm. And I let her know, hey, I got this left arm, but I need a right arm. And then she was like, well, which right arm do you need? Can you send a photo? So what I did was I sent her a link to my video review of those models. And I time stamped it or whatever to the part where I'm actually showing off the left and right arms. And hopefully that resolves it. So we'll get a feedback on that as well. Okay, so I've got a bunch of orders out. I say a bunch, but I got like 6 orders out. I have. We were talking about. Before I do this, I want to jump back into my Napoleonics because I'm super excited. If you haven't figured it out already, I'm overly excited. You probably saw me dancing one night when I did a video. But so let me show you something that I've been working on. Let's see if I can turn on that. There we go. All right, so this is I use Google Docs, super easy. I make a change, it auto saves, all that's good. You probably remember a page like this that I did for my Quatre Bras battle. Well, this is also Quatre Bras, but what I did was I changed the font size a little bit, big deal, but I also got rid of all the colors. Okay. I'm just now thinking I need to make another section, maybe here, maybe there, where I make some skirmisher bases. Yeah, or some skirmisher bases, or maybe some limbers for my artillery. Yeah, so I do need to put a couple of those on there. Okay, the brigade commanders like Halkett or Pack or Kemp or Maitland or whatever, those guys are included with your Epic Waterloo starter box. They're all exactly the same, right? They're all exactly the same Brigadier General pose. That's okay. That doesn't bother me at all. They could be all the same pose. But I'm not going to base them on their little square bases. They probably have like these 20 by 20 bases, I'm guessing. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to base them on probably 25 round bases. And then I noticed they don't have like division generals or corps or armies. So I'm going to use the Napoleon's Battles philosophy of division, corps, and all that as 2 models, 3 models, 4 models. And I'm going to gradually increase the circle. So circles are going to be generals so that they stand out. Yeah, so yeah, that's definitely a thing. So I also I also went to my this is the left wing, right? Marshal Ney, but basically it's the troops that were at Quatre Bras, and then this is the Allied troops that were at Quatre Bras. But what's kind of key is it includes like how many men are in each of the battalions. Even this has all how many men are in each of the battalions. And I don't know how I want to do this yet. This is just a thought process of how I want to do my basing, right? So tiny units are obviously skirmishers. They're all, even 10 units are always skirmishers. And how many men are in a unit that would be considered a skirmish unit, right? And 150 seems about reasonable, right? Now, what makes it a small unit? When you get to about 200, and this can be fudged up and down. These are not hard numbers. So like if someone has 399 guys, I might still consider him a standard unit. If somebody has 850 guys, I might still consider him a standard unit, right? Large would be 900 or more. I thought about 1,000, but that would make this guy right here 896. I made that guy a standard size unit in 28 millimeter, but in Epic, I think I'm just going to go ahead and bump it up to a large unit. And I went from 1 base to 2 bases. Now this could be 3 bases of infantry, right? And then I could make 4 or 5 large. But I decided that I think I'm going to do 4 bases. So you can form square, obviously, you know, but you could form square with just 1 base. But form square, it looks like 4 bases is the standard size. But I've thought about making it 3 and then one of the bases be skirmishers. so that it would be a lot like a mixed formation. I could have my 3 bases, and then I could deploy a base of skirmishers out front. I don't know if that's how I'm going to do it. I don't know exactly what that's called for. And then large being 6 bases just seemed even, right? I wanted to go with even numbers so that I could do 2 bases side by side, and then 2 bases right behind. And with large, I could do 2 more bases right behind, or I could do 2 bases to the side. I'm not sure. So I think this is the way I'm going to do it. And I think that's the numbers. Now, cavalry is done a little bit differently. So they're done by squadrons, and the squadrons are not... basically, I'm looking at some of the cavalry, like let's here we go, like Uhlans and Hussars. Okay, the Hussars at 656 in my Quatre Bras, I considered that a large cavalry unit, and the Uhlans I considered a small. But 603 I considered standard. So I considered these light dragoons to be small, not standard. And they're almost 400. So I think I'm going to go standard between 2 and 6. I think maybe 3 and 6. I might change that to 3 and 6, and then anything under 300 being small, and then anything over 600 making them large. So I don't know. Plus, my artillery is going to be done in 3 guns on the battlefield. But I might do just 2 gun batteries. And the reason why, well, if you just look at this, like Lloyd's battalion, Lloyd's Royal Artillery, he's got 6 guns there. Right? And if I do a 3-gun battery, what you're telling me is each model gun is 2 guns. That doesn't scale properly for me for this epic battlefield, right? Now, if each of those guns are 3 guns, right? Half a battery is 1 gun, a full battery is 2. That way, if I need to model a half battery on the table, I could just put 1 gun out there. I think that's the way I'm going to do it. To me, the area of space that 2 models bases occupy is what those 6 guns would have occupied. Not counting limbers, right? If you take an artillery battery with their limbers and everything else, obviously it's going to be a bigger, footprint on the table. But I'm modeling my limbers separately. So, and I think I'm going to do 1 limber per battery of 2 modeled guns. So I'm going to have a limber, and I think I'm going to do them at 100 millimeters length. And then I could just put the 2 guns directly behind the 1 limber model to make the whole thing limbered up. I think that's where I'm pretty much guaranteed that's where I'm going to do it. So with also, having said that, with the cavalry being based 5 horses per base, it doesn't scale properly for me. I think I'm going to do 4 figures per base, which will help when I start doing metal models in 15 millimeter on these bases. Plus, I thought about this. Why are the cavalry bases and the infantry bases exactly the same size. Wouldn't you think the cavalry squadrons would have a deeper footprint than a company of infantry? So I'm thinking I want to do 25 millimeter depth, but keep the 60 millimeter length. That's fine. The frontage will be the same, but I'm thinking a 25 millimeter depth would be more appropriate, right? And it also might help if I do all my infantry on 25 millimeter depth, but I'm not going to do that. I haven't made that decision yet, but I'm thinking I'm going to do 25 millimeter depth for cavalry, but we'll see that. I'm going to see how the 15 millimeter cavalry models actually fit on a 20 millimeter infantry base. And I'm okay, so like let's use the cavalry starter box. You get 2 bases of Scots Greys. That's 10 models. But that's not how many models you get. You actually get 3 sprues of 4 Scots Greys. So that tells me if I do 4 figures per base, I'm going to have a standard sized unit of Scots Greys because I'm going to have 4, 4, and 4. And it's so I won't need, I'll be good to go, right? That's just an example. The cavalry has a weird mix of extras, and I think it divides by 4 better than 5. Okay, so that was that. Okay, let's get to cleaning. Okay, now, obviously these guys don't come with bases. I'm overwhelmed. Okay. Or maybe I'm just whelmed. Okay, move my trash can between my legs. That way, as I trim any metal off of these models, it'll fall into the trash can and not everywhere else. Now, one thing I did notice about these offensive miniatures, there's not a whole lot of flash or mold lines or anything like that on any of these models. There is just like the end of his hand does have a little bit of flash. Now sometimes I'll use a, you can't see me doing any of this off camera, but sometimes I will use a file on the bottom of the figure, but in this case I'm just dragging my X-Acto backwards across the base. Alright, so yeah, this is not something that you would, it's not an exciting thing to watch me do. And plus these models are all still a little wet. Because again, I said I did it right before we went live. I washed them, and they just hadn't had enough time to dry. I want to make sure they're dry before I prime them. Speaking of primer. I did not know this, but Liquitex, the same people that did my Flow Aid, and I also use like modeling paste or flex paste from them. I do water effects. They have some water effects that I've used from them. Some Gizo or whatever. But I didn't know this, but they have primer. Painting primer. And they had this light gray. So these guys were all painted with the Liquitex primer. Light gray. Yep, he looks good. And I think that, yeah, they look really good. So, I'm going to start light gray. See, my primer and my wash and my color coding all go hand in hand, right? Because your primer will kind of inform your paint to how dark it is or to how light it is, or if you see any highlights or anything like that. The lighter your primer, the more highlighting will shine through once you paint. The darker you prime, the better your shadows will stand out. Okay, we're not doing any gluing right now. All I'm doing is getting rid of flash and mold lines. That's the idea. And there's no gluing. I'm not doing any gluing right now. Okay, so with the Liquitex Flow Aid, changing the effect that my dark, it's called strong tone wash. I probably should do it with dark tone as well. Do some self experiments just to see how the Flow Aid improves the boy, look at all those entrenching tools. There's more hidden under there somewhere. There's a couple. A lot of entrenching tools. Okay. They give you twice. They give you early war and late war entrenching tools, so you can decide which ones. You don't even have to put them on if you don't want. But if you like that look on your model, put them on. I'm going to be painting these guys up as D-Day 101st or 82nd, I suppose, but it's mostly 101st. A lot of these guys have these some of them do. He doesn't. Some of them have these patches molded and they look like the Screaming Eagle. So back to the wash. So because the Flow Aid improves the look of the, or I should say, improves the flow down into the shadows, really accentuating the shadows, I won't need to prime black, specifically on my Napoleonics. So I thought about it and I said, well, if I want like my reds and my blues to be vibrant, I need to use something a little less than black. So I'm going with gray, right? A lot of people prime gray. A lot of people are using contrast paints and they're using like gray or super light gray or even an ivory color. So I plan to do a little bit of an experiment. But when I was hunting for some gray primer and I came across this Liquitex light gray primer. I ordered it. I used it. I'm not 100% sold on it. What the part of it that I didn't like was that when I primed those models, when it dried, which it dried pretty quickly, I don't have a problem with that. But when it dried, it was kind of a satin. It wasn't flat, it wasn't matte, and it wasn't gloss. It was kind of a satin, which is still, to me, too glossy. One reason why I don't like painting satin primers is because they are slippery, right? And paint doesn't, not all paints, some paints do, but not all paints want to stick to a satin coating. Okay, this guy actually has a mold line on his inseam, which can be disguised as an inseam. All right. One thing I do like about these offensive miniatures, I don't know if I mentioned this just a second ago, but there's very little mold lines. Most of the trimming I'm doing is the bottom of the base. It's not perfectly flat. And I like it to be perfectly flat for when I glue it down to my Wargaming base. It glues on really well, right? Is that Flash? Or is that his sling? Okay. Yeah, there's nothing on this guy except for the base. And I'll show you the next base just so you can kind of see what kind of situation I'm dealing with on the bases. That's a very minor mold line, and that's how they all are. A little scratching and using the flat side. Resolved. Okay. I just saw a movie last night. We have Disney Plus, so we live stream Disney movies and stuff like that. And I noticed that Shang-Chi was on there. And so we went ahead and watched Shang-Chi last night. It's a Marvel movie. It's of a character I've never ever heard of before in the past. I read a lot of Marvel in my youth. I read a lot of Marvel, almost no DC. I just wasn't into the whole DC Dark Universe. I was more into the Marvel universe because Marvel was set on Earth, you know. DC is set on a fantasy world where you have Metropolis and Star City and you know, stuff like that, where you don't have that on Earth, where Marvel was set, you know, New York was the main city, you know, and then there was the West Coast Avengers, you know, in San Francisco and all that stuff. So I don't know. I just felt like I was more connected to Marvel because, you know, of the world, but also the characters. But because I didn't read any DC, I can't really comment and say they had worse characters. I didn't like a superhero, specifically Superman, that is indestructible. You know, I liked my heroes to have flaws or weaknesses, and Kryptonite just wasn't enough. Wasn't good enough for me. Okay, so my point is, we watched Shang-Chi last night. It was kind of slow, to be honest. It wasn't. Wow, leaves flying everywhere. Yeah, gonna have a lot to clean up in a minute, but it didn't have a whole lot of action. There were scenes in it where there was a lot of action, but what it reminded me of was old Chinese action theater, you know, very, very fake, which, guess what? Superhero, fake, I get it. But it didn't grab me like an Iron Man or a Captain America or anything like that. It was a martial art action theater movie, and that's fine if that's what you're going in to watch, and you want to see Guy do a bunch of gung fu or whatever. That's fine. Oh, you know what it kind of reminded me of now that I'm thinking about it? Those old Jackie Chan movies, like The Drunken Master or whatever. That's kind of what it reminded me of. And I liked it. I enjoyed it. It was fun. But it just didn't have the same Marvel superhero appeal. You know, it just wasn't a Marvel superhero. But then again, he never claimed to be a superhero. And he was kind of stumbling his way through. I don't want to ruin it for you if you haven't already seen it. So I'm not going to tell you like any of the plot or the story or anything. But I'm just going to say, go in with an open mind. Enjoy it as a Chinese action theater, Jackie Chan style movie, and you'll come out with a smile. But if you go in thinking it's going to be a Marvel superhero movie, you're gonna be disappointed, because that's not what it is. Wow, I'm flying through these guys. I didn't realize how little the Flash actually was on these guys. I am flying. Also, now I'm going to get a little bit political on you right now. And if you don't like politics, or if you don't like my politics, then just leave. But I'm going to say something that might offend some people. It shouldn't offend. If you haven't noticed, I'm white. I'm not embarrassed about it. I am white. I was born white. I was raised by a white family. I've had my share of problems. My parents got divorced. You know, my dad got remarried. I grew up with my mother in my early years, and then my father in my later years. Nothing was ever given to me because I was white, or at least I didn't feel like it was. You know, I don't consider myself to be a racist in a negative way. Okay, I am going to say I do consider myself a racist, but not in any kind of negative way. Just using this as an example, I feel that black men are physically, or I should say athletically superior to white men. I just believe that. I believe there are stereotypes because they have some basis, maybe not a whole lot of basis, but some basis in reality. And I'm going to use this as an example. I look at the NFL, I look at the NBA, and what do I see? Physical specimens of men. These guys would kick my ass from, well, actually they wouldn't, but they could outlift me, they could outrun me. Even when I was in my physical prime, which I'm not anymore, but when I was, I feel like I was still behind the 8 ball. Now you look at baseball. Baseball is also a sport. You need to have physical specimens, and you do. But there's a lot more white men in baseball. Why do you think that is? Because I believe, and I could be wrong, it's just a belief that I have, that baseball suits white physiology better. I don't know if it's hand-and-eye coordination for, hitting a ball, or if it's the fact that you're not running around the field, like getting winded 100% of the time on both basketball and football. Lung capacity, I think, is a good thing. Okay, so I'm digressing. What I'm trying to get at is, I think there are mental, physical differences between various races. Let's talk about Asians. Asians tend to be smaller, skinnier, probably have really good hand and eye coordination. I think they have their own physical. Okay, that's gonna have to be tweaked, but I can do that later. Meaning the base goes like this and the feet go like this, and I need to tweak the base a little bit, and I'll do that later. But so yeah, I call myself a racist. because I think different races have different physical characteristics. Now, do I think any one of them is better than any other one of them? Sure. Just depending on what the topic is, because a white man might have something going for him, and that's also not 100% of the time either, because there are white men that have good lung capacity, can play basketball and are in the football, and there are black men that play baseball or whatever. So there's always, I'm just talking about the general overall, differences. I think we have differences. It's not a bad thing. It's good to have differences. It's good to be unique. It's good to have your own strengths and weaknesses. Okay. And then that's where the, and then there's individual strengths and weaknesses. That was racial. That's kind of like the primer on your miniature is your race. And then depending on how you paint your life and, your genetics, your parents or whatever, that will shape. Okay, this barrel is gone. Okay. Okay. And I know this might upset some people, and I don't care. If it upsets you, then I don't care about your feelings. And the reason why I bring this up, because it's not a subject that I like to talk about a lot, because I don't consider myself a victim. I don't consider myself to be a racist in a negative way. So, like, if I meet someone from another race, any other race, on the street, I'm not going to make an immediate assumption that he wants to kill me, or I don't want to talk to him because I'm afraid of him, or I'm jealous of him because he has this advantage over this advantage. I don't think that's not me. So anybody that I speak with, I'm a Martin Luther King. I believe in that statement. I don't want my kids to be judged by the color of their skin. I want them to be judged by the content of their character. Right? And that goes for anybody. Okay. So having said that, there's something that really bothers me. And it because I don't understand it. It bothers me in a bad way. There are people that will play a race card unnecessarily. Okay, so I'm watching The Bachelorette, right, with my wife. We watch it. I kind of laugh at the guys, how they act around a woman, and I kind of, it's a social experiment. Have you ever gone to a park, sat on a bench, and just watched people interact with each other? This is kind of what I do with The Bachelorette or The Bachelor. How the women act amongst themselves and how they act with their dates and stuff like that. And I get a kick about that. So we're watching this, and this has come up more than once, and it's really bothered me. The Bachelorette makes a statement to her potential mate, her boyfriends, potential fiancés, and she says, in school, I never got a date because I was black. That's not how she said it. She said, guys would not approach me because I was a different color. Okay, first of all, she's not black. She's 50-50. She's black and white. She's mixed. First of all. Second of all, she fulfilled a stereotype where she was a basketball star. She was very good at it. Went to a lot of championships, etc. Which I'm going to tell you, in high school, that might have been intimidating for guys. They're high school kids. They might be intimidated by you being a physical specimen. So right there, you're eliminating half of the half of the high school community just from their geekness, okay? Their nerdidity. These guys, that they're not jocks, Some of them are, obviously. There's a bunch of jocks in every school. Some of them are pretty cool. Okay, so that eliminates half of the dudes. Then the other half probably don't want to date her because she's homely. Okay? I look at the current Bachelorette, and I think to myself, if I was single, her age, would I pursue her? Hell no. I would never have approached her. She just doesn't look good. Not that she's got a great personality, or which I'm sure she might. She doesn't. But that's another thing. Okay, let's get back to the homely thing. She's homely, so that's going to eliminate a bunch of guys that don't want to have anything to do with this ugly girl. It's unfortunate, but it's true, right? I'm just speaking the truth. And then there's another group of guys that are not going to approach her because she's racist. Nobody wants to be associated with a racist. And she is. She's like, people don't want to date me because I'm black. That just right there tells me that you see everything with the race filter. No. That's not why. If you were, there are a lot, and I mean a lot, of good-looking black girls. There are a lot, and I do mean a lot, of black girls that have a very good personality. I dated a black girl in high school, actually. I don't know if you guys knew this or not. It was very short. she was extremely clingy. I think it only lasted like a week or two, but that didn't stop me from pursuing it. And then once I realized that she was clingy, I mean, she had to be with me 24/7. I was like, okay, this is going a little too far. I'm out of here. And I don't know, maybe she was like that in high school. I don't know. So personality, racism, athleticism, all of those together probably had something to do with her not having any dates in high school. Not that she was black. But in her head, it's easier to blame something like that than to take personal accountability of themselves. And I'm seeing that play out nationwide, worldwide. I personally think there are less racists in this country in 2020, 2021, even with the increased population from the 1950s. I think there's less. Even with more population, I think there's less. Of course, you're always going to get those guys out there that are like, you know, you're an Asian, you know, you got to be, you know, we don't like Asians in this bar, you know, that kind of stuff. Or we don't like blacks in this bar. That, but I'm going to say, those kids, those men or women that are raised that way, there's few and far between. I don't think this country's like that anymore. I think we've gone past that. And then with all the rioting and stuff like that, I don't think it had anything to do with race. I think it was more the pandemic. But yes, did they say race? Yes. There are racists out there that latched on to these movements and claimed it was for or against racism. Okay, and that's another thing I gotta say this. I'm sorry if you guys come to a miniature Wargaming live stream and you hear me talking about racism. I apologize. If you don't like it, lump it. Because I feel it's important to say. I got to get it off my chest. I feel like the people that are complaining about racism are the racists themselves. It's like, look in a mirror. You scream, racism, 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 when in reality, you're the person that can't let it go. You have to latch on to it because it makes you feel like you're poor because of race and not because of the fact that you don't want to work. Okay, that's enough of that. We don't need to continue on with that. Sorry about that. I just had to share that. What triggered that was watching The Bachelorette, and every night that she's on, once a week, those words come out of her mouth. I was treated differently because I didn't look like them. No, you were treated differently because you are different from them. It has nothing to do with the color of your skin. Wow, that barrel doesn't want to straighten out. Okay. And I don't want to straighten it out in a way where I break it. So we'll have to tweak that later. Okay, so when I go to prime these, am I going to use the Liquitex gray primer? No. I'm going to use my Rust-Oleum flat gray primer. And I always use spray primers. Sometimes in... Really, dude? Let's see. Ah, there he is. Dropped him in the trash can. Okay. But I found him. A lot of times in the past, just to help speed up things, I would use a spray primer that was the color of the uniform. Like my Germans, I would use field gray spray primer. Or my Russians, I would use Russian uniform green spray primer, etc. And then I would just touch up any missed spots or any gaps in the primer with an actual brush-on paint. But what I noticed from that was there's no highlighting. It's all the same color. So we're gonna do gray, and then we're gonna brush on the uniform. And that way, if gray misses a spot, like all spray primers do, then I'll just brush into those little cracks and crevices with the uniform color. Now the uniform colors, I plan to thin out with a matte medium. Maybe not Flow Aid, but a matte medium to kind of thin it out a little bit so that it becomes closer to a contrast paint than an actual paint. And that way the highlights from the gray will shine through a little bit. They don't have to be a lot. Subtlety is very important. Oh, okay. What's going on here? Okay, that was just extra metal just sitting there. Okay, do I think that 62 models for $100 is worth it? I don't know. I could have bought 2 boxes of plastic American paratroopers, getting me 60 models for about $65, right? But what would that not get me? Well, it's not going to get me the 2-inch mortar. It's not going to get me the medium machine guns. It's not going to get me an 81mm mortar. It's not going to get me the Radio Man. So those would have to be bought in metal anyway. And those would have brought this price up to about $100 with those like extra blisters. So I think it's about the same, pretty close to the same price. And they're all metal. And I don't have to do any assembly. Well, actually that's not true. I have to do some assembly. But not like those plastic models. I would have to be gluing arms and heads and musette bags and all that stuff. I'd have to be gluing, where I'm not going to have to do that. I'm going to just clean these, glue them to some bases, and then start painting. Okay, so I've got a video going up in a couple hours. It's going to be the Flow Aid wash video. That's going to be very informative. You should go check that out. Plus, if you haven't seen me do a review of each of these models on offensive miniatures, check those out. Also, I did a texturing video where I textured. When I get the medium texture in, I will, the medium brown that is, when I get that in, I'll probably do like a little add-on to my texturing video, kind of like a part 2. Yeah, the Flow Aid, I think I learned a lesson not to go 50-50, but to go maybe 1 to 2. What's that, 33%? I don't know what it is about this miniature right here I've got in my hand, but I really like it. Once I get him trimmed a little bit, I'll show you what I'm talking about. This is a belt being fed into a machine gun. Look at that snake, that belt, that snake belt. I really like it. I don't know. Little research I did. The machine guns on the British, their tripod is backwards. It's got 2 legs to the front and 1 leg to the rear. But what that kind of let me, because I did a little research, because I always thought it was 2 to the rear, 1 to the front. There are tripods that are made that way, but they're usually, they sit really high, like they're built for anti-aircraft, or, you know, shooting upwards, or 360. And so I was like, well, maybe that's what they were going for. And then looking at the gunner on both the British, he's not a gunner, but this guy, both the British and the Americans, he's sitting really high up. Look, he's on his knees. He's not sitting on his butt. So that tripod is probably supposed to be like that. But I'm going to tell you ahead of time, little heads up, I'm not going to do that. I'm going to take the machine gun tripod, I'm going to cut it off of the machine gun, well, the 1 leg, I'm going to cut it off of the machine gun, I'm going to take the tripod. Okay, that's it right there. I'm going to make this the back side of the tripod, and then I'm going to make this the front side of the tripod. Oh, wait a second. Hold on. Just by cleaning, I learned something. That's not one piece. That's two pieces. Right? Okay. Okay, good. I won't have to do any cutting. I thought I was going to have to cut it off of the machine gun and turn it around. Okay, and then there's the mortar. Okay, we're good. Never mind. But it is still way too high. All right, guys. Well, that was our 2 hours. I will catch you next Wednesday. Oh, yeah, Napoleonic news. I think they said the 1st of January is when the figures are coming out. We'll see if that's true or if that's a rumor or what that is. But I'm excited. I'm getting ready for it. Oh, yeah. I started talking about this and then I got distracted. 15 millimeters. Like I said, I have like 6 orders out. One of them is with a company I did business with back in the 80s called Minifigs. Minifigs is now Matlock Figures or Matchbox or something. I don't remember exactly, but they've been acquired by somebody else. But I remember when I used to do my Napoleonics in 15 back in the 80s, where I did all my Napoleon's battles figures, I remember I bought Essex, I bought Old Glory, I bought minifigs, and the minifigs always felt like they were too small. So I said, I wonder if minifigs are still around, and I found minifigs. I ordered some of their models. Mainly, this is a test run, but mainly so I can compare them to other 15 millimeter models or the Epic models. If they're closer, then I'm going to buy just a bunch of minifigs and just go with that. I'm going to see how many I can put on a base. I'm going to see how tall they are. I bought some artillery pieces. Not many, but did I buy artillery pieces? Because I don't really need any artillery pieces. I might have bought, I know I bought some limbers. I was shopping for artillery pieces, but I don't think I bought any. Because, you know, the Brunswickers or the Dutch Belgians or any of those guys, they're going to have different poses. So maybe I didn't buy any artillery, but I did buy some cavalry. What cavalry did I buy? Brunswick Hussars, maybe? Just something, just as a test run, just to see how the size compares. But yeah, I'm excited. So that's going to be about a month and a half away. All right, and that's where we're going to close the video. I am going to do a Waterloo project update video just to clarify pretty much everything I said today and to let my audience that only watches my Napoleonic updates to get the information, like they might not be able to get me caught up here. All right, we got something from Reg. I've been having issues with rust. Rust-Oleum paints, slow drying, and color coats beating up. Okay. I mean the paint over the primer. Slow drying. Yeah. Okay. I used to have that problem as well. So I can give you a little hint. The shinier the paint, the longer it takes to dry. Okay? So if you use any kind of satin or gloss, then you're going to, or even a matte sometimes will take extra time to dry. Also, if you're in a very humid area, like if you prime and it's like raining outside or whatever, it will take twice as much time to dry. I try to prime flat so that it will dry the fastest. And I also try to prime outdoors in the daytime. And sometimes I'll put my figures in the direct sunlight. Sometimes, very rarely, I'll put the figure in the sunlight before I prime, just so the figure will actually heat up. It'll have a higher than room temperature feel to them, but that's only in direct sunlight. And then I will prime, because you prime over a fairly warm model, it'll dry a lot faster. Not a hot model, like don't put it in the oven and heat it up. I just direct sunlight. Once it's primed, I make sure I leave it out outside to dry, and I usually give it an hour or two. I know it says 30 minutes, 15 minutes or whatever, but I usually give it an hour or two to dry. And the glossier the paint is, the harder for your color coats that you're putting on the primer will stick. They don't want to stick. They're not going to stick to a glossy color. It's too smooth. You want it to have a little bit of roughness. If all you have is like a gloss or a satin primer, then once it's dry to the touch, which is not dry, but once it's dry to the touch, hit it with a matte or a flat varnish just directly over your primer. It'll speed up dry time, believe it or not, and it will make taking paint a lot easier. But I almost never have to do that because I avoid satin or gloss primers with passion. I go with matte or flat. I don't mind Rust-Oleum or Krylon even. Krylon and Rust-Oleum, I don't mind those primers. Too thin coats, I'm giving you the spiel you've probably heard 100 times, but I'll take my models, I'll put them on a pallet. It's usually a foot by foot, and I'll put some models on there, and I'll spray from 4 different angles, and I'll look at it, and I can see that there's metal shining through or plastic, but I will still set it down for an hour and let that first coat simmer or dry, and then I'll pick it back up and hit it again from 4 different sides, and then I'll really evaluate the model to see if I covered everything, and if I see a spot, then I'll touch it, spot, and then I'll spot prime. that's usually how it goes for me. I usually do a 2-coat, a super light coat. I mean super light. And then the second one is just a normal coat. And then I'll spot any gaps that might be missing. And that's how I do it. I put it on a pad. I can hold it up so when I prime, the primer can actually travel in an upward angle and get, you know, under those pants or under the belt or the canteen. And if failing that, then I'll go back. Like when I used to prime almost exclusively black, I would pull the model and I would say, oh my gosh, I didn't get this part under his backpack. Then I would just take black paint. I would just paint it just to complete the primer process, and it would all be black. I don't use an airbrush. I've considered it. I think there's a lot of wastage with airbrushing models, so I don't like wasting paint or time, so I don't do airbrushing. Okay, and then finally, once you get it primed and it's dry and it's flat or matte, and you're getting ready to apply your paint coats, if you're struggling with getting your paint to adhere or stick to it, then your paint is probably too thick or it's way too thin. You got to find that happy medium where it's not too thick, or it's clumpy or brush strokes, but it's also not so thin that it just runs around everywhere. You got to find that happy medium. Sometimes I get some paint wastage because I'll put a drop of paint in, and then that's obviously too thick straight out of the bottle. So I put a drop of water, and then I mix it, and I go, oh my gosh, that one drop of water to the paint is way too thin. So then I got to go back and put another drop or two of paint, and then I say, okay, now I just made it too thick, and I got to go back in and put another drop of water, and now it's too thin. And but ever since I started using the Liquitex matte medium, I've not had that problem. I put the paint in, drop. I put the matte medium drop in, drop. Perfect consistency, paints every time. That's what these guys were painted with. These guys were gray. Let's get some focus. A gray primer, then a 1-drop paint, 1-drop matte medium. Yep. All right, well, that's where we're going to end it. And thanks for the question, Reg. Maybe next week, tell me how it works. Let me know how that might have changed. Tell me what you did differently and why it's working, why it's not working. I'm curious because I always like to learn myself. All right, guys, thanks for coming out and watching this video, and I'll see you in the next video.